Welcome to this episode of the People Dividend podcast. I'm Mike Horne, your host, and I am thrilled to have in the virtual studio today Victoria Pelletier. And she is a powerhouse when it comes to business, leadership, and having no excuses. And in part, what we're here to do is to celebrate the launch of what I believe is her third book and her newest book, The Power of Whole Human Leadership, a topic that so many of you in our audience are interested in, that you resonate with. And let me tell you a little bit about Victoria Pelletier before we dig into the amazing content that she is providing on this episode to her clients and customers and to the world. You'll find and you will discover, as I have, that Victoria is a dynamic speaker, corporate executive, author, particularly known for her work on resilience and transformative leadership. She had a childhood adversity, and yet she achieved executive success in her early 20s. And today she's inspiring audiences with her no excuses philosophy. And her expertise in personal and professional development has made her a sought-out speaker and mentor in the business world. I'm just so delighted to welcome you, Victoria, to our podcast. And why don't you just say a few words about yourself to our audience?
Well, Mike, thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today. You described a lot about myself to your audience already, but I would say I'm a corporate executive. I did step into an executive role fairly young, board director. I work for mostly large B2B companies in the Fortune 100, but I have this incredible entrepreneurial spirit as well, and have both built and bought companies. I reflected on it in the last few months, and I think I bought my first company when I was 20. I describe myself as a multi-potentialite, meaning I have a wide variety of very diverse passions and interests that I'm involved in. I sit on multiple boards, and you mentioned that I'm an author, a speaker as well. And on the personal side, I'm a wife. I'm a mom to two now adult children, which makes me feel very old. I'd like to remind people that I had them at a young age. And I'm a dog mom now as well. And I'm a bit of a foodie, wine lover, music lover, and I love to travel.
Well, that's so super, passions that I think so many of in our audience enjoy. But let's start by talking about the new book. It just came out in September, available on Amazon and probably wherever you purchase your books. But the book is called The Power of Whole Human Leadership. And everyone, you'll find this in the show notes as well as, and before I give Victoria the chance to give us the highlights and what drove her to write The Power of Whole Human Leadership, Managing Modern Workers. I just love this title. Before I give her a chance to talk about that, you're going to be able to find out more information about Victoria Pelletier at her website, which is just her name with a dash in between, Victoria-Pelletier. And that is, you'll see it in the show notes for the spelling. But for those of you who are trying to do this and juggle things in your car or on your walk or wherever you may be at this moment in time, Victoria, I think you've got that. It's Pelletier.com. So put a hyphen between the Victoria and the Pelletier, and you'll be set. Let's dig in, though, Victoria Pelletier, and what led you to write The Power of Whole Human Leadership?
It's a journey, Mike, that I've embarked upon. In fact, I share in this book, after now being a leader of people for over 30 years. My first leadership role was at age 14. I was the assistant manager.
Okay, I was wondering. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. So I've been a leader for a long time, but I also recognize that I had some pretty significant failures as a leader, and I wanted to be able to share my lessons with others. And I've also been leading human capital businesses the last many years, and I've had the opportunity to work with a ton of not just HR professionals, but other business leaders in looking at their own workforce, the culture, the leadership that was going to be required, particularly in a new era of the workforce. And I hate the social media headlines that were grabbed around great resignation and quiet quitting. But the reality is the workforce was demanding something very, very differently. And in my experience, certainly when I stepped into the corporate world, I saw a very different kind of leadership. People I would choose to be nothing like, that I did not want to follow, the command and control. So I had some capacity while I was in career transition myself. And I'm like, now is the perfect time to put pen to proverbial or digital paper and get this out there. And so it's my journey from a nickname I hated in my 20s. I found out I had is the Iron Maiden. And at first, when I heard that, I was like, oh, well, that's unfortunate. But I was put in to do reorganization and performance management. So I thought it was a result of being really strong on that front. But I realized it was the mask I wore and maybe emulating a little bit of that command and control. And so instead, as I've evolved to be called the turtle, and here's the cover of the book. It's got a turtle and there's illustrations throughout. That became my nickname, in that I am extremely resilient and can shoulder a lot, including in the work world, 40 mergers and acquisitions, yet being vulnerable, being soft and marshmallow-like on the inside, and letting that be seen. And so that's what this book is about, is talking about the lessons I've had in leadership, not only what I've learned and the mistakes I've learned from, but those I've observed in the multitude of environments I've worked in and the clients I've supported.
Well, that's great. I think we have an endemic, particularly in the United States, of bad managers. Uh, we have 50 plus years of social science research that tells us not to promote people on the basis of technical skills. And yet, that is the pathway by which most people advance into managerial and subsequently executive ranks in organizations. But you're right, there are so many bad managers. And I wonder why this persists. I love your comment about resiliency, Victoria Pelletier. And when I think about the Iron Maiden and when I think about the turtle, I think about one thing in common, which is the hard shell. And that would certainly come through all the experiences that you described: mergers and acquisitions, performance management systems, difficult employee relation situations. What do you think about that in terms of resiliency, and how has that shaped your career and approach? And where do we see it in the power of whole human leadership?
I think the ability to be very resilient, and with that comes the agility to adjust. And you look at what our world looks like right now, from, again, if I just reflect on a few years ago, what happened through the pandemic, that created one series of challenges for the entire world, to just the social unrest and what's happening in our world. So we have to be incredibly agile and adapt. But with that is the need to be resilient, and to not just bounce back. With resilience comes some of the lessons I developed. I talk about this certainly in the book, but I also separately, actually I delivered a TED Talk recently on what I refer to as healthy resilience. And so I talk through what I believe are 5 steps to healthy resilience. You can be resilient, you can power through, but if you never process the challenge, adversity, the trauma, whatever it is, then that's an unhealthy way. And I actually had to learn from that on a personal front. And so for me, sorry, go ahead.
No, I noticed that in your bio, you talk about a childhood adversity. Are you comfortable talking about that? And maybe it is a pathway into more about this book.
So I'm born to a drug addicted teenage mother who was very abusive to me.
I'm so sorry about that.
Thank you. I'm fortunate that I was adopted out of that environment when I was 4, but then continued to have other trauma. I was sexually assaulted when I was 14, some challenges, my parents loving, but really lower socioeconomic position, which is why I started working at age 11. And so for me, I was determined I will be better than the biology of the woman and the family that I was born into, or the circumstances that I subsequently had to deal with. So that's a big part of my why. to sort of quote from Simon Sinek, you
Uh-huh.
understand what drives me. And that's a big part of it. But it's also where I started to develop extreme resilience. Now, not always healthy resilience. And that was, I don't think I really processed some of that trauma until much later. And so, but it made it from a work perspective, I put on, as I said, the mask, not just the mask, in terms, because I didn't want to be questioned as a young female queer leader in the workplace where I felt like I was the only one. But I also came from this horrible backstory. And so for me, I had to learn these steps to be what I refer to as healthy, a healthy resilience. And so the first one is always being really clear on the goal or the objective or the vision that you have for yourself. That becomes your anchor consistently. And same thing in business. So this is applicable both for business and for personal. The next one is to be very self-aware and incredibly self-reflective. And so understanding why you might have this immediate emotion or trigger and how you might react to something. So being aware of those things. The next is what I refer to as strategic intentionality. And that is to model the thoughts, the language, the actions, and the behavior that move you towards that goal. The fourth is to surround yourself with people that will support you, but also those that will call you out. They'll hold you accountable to that vision. They should challenge you. They're going to love you. And the last one is giving yourself permission to fail. When you do, pick yourself back up and recognize like one foot in front of the other is progress. But again, you're anchored, and it's this loop. You then anchor back to that goal or objective. So that is what has helped me. I needed to make a pivot in my own leadership. I needed to be self-reflective and aware and understand, why were people calling me the Iron Maiden? How was I showing up? And what did I need to do differently?
So amazing. Talk about that fourth point a little more. So we've got clear on goals, self-aware, strategic intentionality. We've got the power to fail as the fifth one. Talk about the fourth one a little bit.
The fourth one is surrounding yourself with community that will
Yeah.
support you. So those are, trusted advisors. If you want to call them your personal board of directors.
Uh-huh.
And where necessary, professional help can certainly, particularly for people who've dealt with trauma or things like that, that can certainly, be support. But it's finding those people who, like I said, just not are going to love you and tell you what at times you want to hear, but they're actually going to be the people who tell you what you need to hear and challenge you. The radical candor that needs to come out to help you with if you're not being as self-aware, to help you with some of that and guide you along the actions that you need to take to ultimately get towards your goal or objective.
It's remarkable what you've been able to achieve and what you're bringing to the world in your work, particularly with the launch of this most recent book, The Power of Whole Human Leadership. And I've often, thought about, well, what makes for a successful adult? Working with a lot of executives who have high stress jobs where there seems that there are never enough hours in the day, working through people challenges, resource challenges, worrying about the CEO and the board, I think that one of the greatest keys to, what creates success in adult life for these people is a relatively happy childhood. I think this is so key. And here you are, able to take all this, I'm going to just say horrible stuff that happened to you, which I feel so badly about. All of this horrible stuff that happened to you, and you're able to turn it into something that is amazing. It's quite remarkable, Victoria.
Thank you. That's where you reference in my bio, Mike, the no excuses.
Yes.
This is where it comes from. I sign a majority of my social media posts with 2 hashtags, one of which is no excuses. The other one's unstoppable. And I am
your first book, right? Unstoppable.
Correct.
Your first book, yes. Stories of Changemakers Who Dare to Make a Difference, right?
And that is, nothing is going to prevent me from achieving the goal or objective I've set for myself. But to do that, yes, there's resilience. There's a multitude of other things. But the mindset is around no excuses. Now, it drives my children insane. But this is what I mean by that is you can't necessarily prevent the challenge or adversity that's going to come your way, but you do have a choice in how you're going to respond to it. And that's what I mean when I talk to people about no excuses. Doesn't mean you can't have emotion and cry and be angry or whatever it is, but then you make a choice in terms of how you're going to move forward.
And how do you do that as a 4-year-old or as a 14-year-old? And I mean, it's just incredible.
There's a Boston Harvard professor of around mental health, Dr. Elise Park, and she did a study many years ago around resilience, actually. And so what she discovered is, there are some people who are just innately more resilient than others. And I do think that, that's me. I think there is something in my DNA, fight or flight. I'm a fighter. But what her study also found, and as I talk about, you can develop a level of resilience. So as more and more things, I quoted 40 merger and acquisition transactions, all of that has been either traumatic and has certainly come with, a significant change. My ability to have developed this strong resilience has helped me through that for sure. And so at 4, it was an 8, and 14, and then I continued to work and develop like a muscle, how to be more resilient in a much more healthy manner.
Yeah, so amazing. And, for many of you who are frequent listeners to our podcast, you'll know that Victoria and I share some things in common, which is merger and acquisition experience and how all of that works in small companies to some of the behemoth giants that I worked in. And also what it means to divest companies and to get rid of companies out of your portfolio. These are the experiences that build resilience in some ways, when you're in human resources or when you're in the people and culture businesses. What do we do? For many of our listeners, whom I thank and I'm grateful for every day, is that we often see guests on the show who are first-time authors and they've got their first book out, and in the spirit of promoting ideas and promoting ways that we can make organizations better, not in a rehabilitative sense, but in the sense of allowing people to bring more of who they are to what they do. Victoria's a 3-time author now. I mean, we've got this great title, Unstoppable. We've got Influence Unleashed, which is about forging a lasting legacy through personal branding. And now, in September, The Power of Whole Human Leadership, which is, I think, combines in some ways ideas from the earlier books, Influence Unleashed and Unstoppable, because you are talking about in The Power of Whole Human Leadership how to master the art of personal branding, how to supercharge your career. So, thinking about that HR manager or that HR leader sitting in their office today, whether it's on site at a corporate location or in their home office, what are some of the insights, and what are 1 or 2 insights that you could provide about how she manages her personal branding and supercharges her career?
I think it's critically important, and there's no time like the present to start. So for your listeners, no matter what stage of their career they're at, I told my now 24-year-old son, but I think he was 21 or 22 coming out of college, how important it was to start building his brand now. And so for a multitude of reasons, for the HR professionals listening, it's a strong connectedness to the employer brand. As HR professionals, we want to work for people we like and trust. Therefore, we go to work with or for them. But also for those who are looking to grow their careers to higher and higher levels. And where I see most people fall down as they think about personal brand is they only think of the first step in what I believe is like a 4-part foundation to brand. So the first part is, what do you do? What's your subject matter expertise? And potentially what function or what industry you do that in. So again, that's foundational. You absolutely need that. And you need to have some stories of how you've done it well and how you've overcome challenge or lessons you've learned. But beyond that, and you're right, Mike, I do tie all these pieces together. I think it's important for a leader to think about being authentic and how do you show up? How do you learn more about the whole human? And that's the other parts to the brand foundation. The next part is what makes you you. Storytelling, values, interests, passions that'll build the connection or the hook with people that share something similar or just want to learn more about that. And the next one, although very connected to the second, is what makes you different from others that do what you do. And so for me, for an example of that, I am incredibly values and integrity driven. I do operate with radical candor. Those are unique to who I am as a human. But in part, that's also what makes me different. I want another nickname I'm called is the CEO whisperer after, being leadership consulting. But I got that name because having worked in the world of management consulting, many consultants tell their clients what the clients want to hear.
Sure.
Not what they need to hear. That is not me. That is a very big differentiator. So figure out what makes you different from others. And that is things like our lived experience. And by the way, I wouldn't have told the story around I was embarrassed by my early years. But that's what makes me me, what makes me driven. That's what's developed the resilience. So tell those. And the last part in the foundation is thinking about what do you want to be known for? Legacy and impact. So when I die, I don't know about you, Mike, but I don't want them talking about all the mergers and acquisitions and sales and revenue and profitability. I want them to talk about who I was as a human, as a leader, that I raised good humans, and that I left workplaces, community, and the world a better place. So that I would tell your listeners, those are the 4 parts. Certainly what you do, who you are, what makes you different, and what legacy or impact you want to be known for.
Boy, it's so refreshing to hear that. I have a doctorate in organization behavior, and in one of the roles that I had in a technology company in Silicon Valley, in about the span of 18 months, we did about 16 mergers, acquisitions, and divestitures. And the chief human resources officer at that company, I was the number 2 at that time, thought I would have a longer career there. But the merger, acquisition, and divestiture activity took us in different directions. Said to most of the HR team in that organization is that you earn a PhD in human resources when you go through that many M&As and divestitures in a very short period of time. And I'm so grateful to hear, though, that isn't what defines your experience. It's what contributes to it, that makes you help others transform failures, things that don't work out so well, into success. And so as you think about that then, what are some of the most important lessons you've learned about professional growth? Given all these experiences that you've had.
So when I think about my own career success, I attribute it to many things. So resilience is certainly one of them. That's my why. Personal brand is another. Performance is another that I will, and that's where the professional development comes in. It's understanding how success is measured in the organizations that you're working in, number 1, and finding coaches who will help you specifically around achieving success and from a performance standpoint. But it's also, as you think about your own career, you are the CEO of your own career, your own brand, all of those things. Do not put it in the hand of others alone. Do you want coaches and mentors who are going to support you? Yes. But that means you need to be connected to the strategy of the business and the market as a whole, because as many of your listeners and, as HR professionals know, the shelf life of skills is rapidly reducing. And so understanding where the company you work for, the industry you're in, and the world at large, particularly as we think about Gen AI now, it is changing. And so from a development standpoint, understand how to deliver successfully today, but what skills do you need to enhance, or new skills do you need to seek out and develop to make sure you're relevant for the future that you desire. So not everyone needs to go up the hierarchical ladder, but do you want to go like breadth, depth, like what is it? So make sure you understand that and you're seeking that out. And then ideally seek support from those that you're working with, that community, people who are going to support you to help you achieve the development required for today and for future.
Well, you're so right. Really, let's just focus on AI for just a little bit and its related topic, automation. Recently, in a 1 month period, I had three presentations. Presentations right in a row with different organizations: Society for Human Resources Management, the Biopharma Product Portfolio Managers Global Conference, and another presentation at the Italian Innovation Institute. And in all of those presentations and all of those topics, the folks in the audience were talking about AI. And, as you read about it, a lot of people at work now aren't even writing their own emails. It's all generated by AI. I had one of the participants in the audience said that, he needed to develop a report. He asked his boss if he could use AI, and the boss said, well, just do it on your phone and then cut and paste it, because all of their corporate servers had blocked access to a lot of AI. So as you think about that, given your history, given your experience, given your role as a wife, mom, adult, all of the magic that you bring into your work that energizes us in your audiences, when you're speaking, when you're presenting, what do you think about this? What do you think about AI in the workplace and in terms of professional development?
We can't avoid AI. I think so. What I'm going to, tell everyone listening, you cannot have your blinders on around this. It is here and it's going to continue to evolve. And so we need to adjust and be agile as it enters our daily work. Now, what I would say is I think there's great opportunity to use AI and automation for the kind of routine tasks that we have. So, and the ability, by the way, for self-serve, I'm like the prime customer who I talk on the phone all day. The last thing I want to do when I have a service issue is pick up the phone. I want to talk through chat, but the ability to quickly get out and talk to a real person, as well. And so recognize it's here to stay, and it's going to continue to evolve. And so I think AI can help us with some of the learning pieces you talk about from a development standpoint, but the part that gets, I'll say, left behind in the work that's currently, being automated in particular, is the stuff is much more complex. It requires innovation and problem solving and the kind of human skills that are going to be required to have the conversations when exceptions happen and people want to talk to live humans. And so don't be afraid of it. Embrace it, learn it, and AI itself can help you learn more about it. And it's going to continue to evolve. I mean, I actually have been heavily involved in AI. I'm the strategic advisor for a couple of AI companies, and even looking at agentic AI, which starts to think about, the knowledge, not just the routine processes. That's going to start. Now, I think there's lots of work on it, but that's a lot sits in our heads and it's not documented on paper, but it's going to continue to adjust the way we work. So learn about it, embrace it, and hopefully recognize that hopefully it'll make a more enjoyable part of work. Get rid of the administrative tasks. The stuff that get hopefully left behind is the stuff that most people will enjoy most.
Yeah, I mean, this AI and automation has been developing over the years, and it seems that we're reaching some crescendos. I remember at the beginning of the year in 2024, many of my HR clients were struggling with this around policy development. How do we, treat AI in the workplace? And of course, I noticed that there were two things going on with my clients and their organizations. Some were banning it completely and just saying you can't, as in the example that I just described a few minutes ago. And others were just fully embracing it. And I think that, I agree with you, Victoria. I think you're providing great insight, experience, and wisdom about, okay, it's here. What are we going to do about it? And I wish more leaders had that same sort of thought. I'm here, I'm in a leadership position, and I'm in a managerial position. What can I do to make it better? As opposed to, what can I do to control it? And I think your books, all of them, which you can find on Victoria Pelletier, all three of these books really talk about embracing the whole human, embracing that spirit so that you can grow. Back to your earlier comments, and you can bring this resilience. So I do want to talk about one of the concepts, though, that was in one of your earlier books, Before the Power of Whole Human Leadership, which is the no excuses philosophy. Just talk a little more about that, because I think it resonates with so many. It certainly resonates with me.
For me, I described it a little bit earlier around the mindset that comes, like, as I said, we can't necessarily prevent the adversity or challenges that are going to come our way, but it's how we react and respond to those things. And that goes back to healthy, resilient steps as well. But with that, as I say, mindset, I don't do things that do not bring me personal or professional joy or value. And so again, that's for me to do all that I do. And I hate when people say, like, how do you do or have it all? I'm like, well, it's come with compromise. It's come with trade-offs. But it's that no excuses mindset. So when I was young, when my children were young, I worked 60 to 80 hours a week, and I made choices. So for me, and it was back in the day, I was certainly going into an office every day, but I also was on the road a lot. But I would make sure that I left the office to get home and have dinner with them and then be with them for a couple of hours before they went to bed. But then I worked online later. Mm-hmm. I'm a fitness fanatic. And so I work out early in the morning. Well, that means I can't be up streaming Netflix until all hours of the night. And so it means I have a bedtime. As my kids were teenagers, certainly, and now adults, I went to bed earlier than them because I'm getting up early. So that's all of the no excuses. So for me, if you are unhappy, if something does not bring you joy, you are in a position to change that. And if it's in a work environment, there's a lot you can do to change, whether it's changing leaders, changing roles. And at some point, if you're unable to make that change, you still have choice. You can either stop complaining or leave. And so, so when I work with, I do executive or career coaching on a limited basis. But when I do, that's a big part of like what I'm talking to these people about is how do they map their, career and make some of the changes to, get to a better place in terms of the vision or goal they have for themselves or the things that will bring them joy or value.
So great. And I'm so glad to hear you begin to describe some of the services that you provide to your clients. And, if I was interested in working with you, Victoria, what are the things that I would call you about? Why would I pick up the phone or send an email or get in touch with you through your website, Victoria-Pelletier? What would I be calling you about? What would I be requesting?
The number one requested thing is for me to come in and be a speaker, at an event. I have, 6 or 7 topics that I talk about, some of which we've spoken around today: resilience, leadership, culture, diversity and inclusion,
vulnerability, exactly. Generational, bridging gaps. Yes.
Yeah. So speaking would be one. And then the other, and I don't market actually. So your listeners, or those watching us today, if they go to my website, I don't market that I do coaching because I am a senior executive. And I want to make sure I can so I have a handful of clients I will work with, usually referred to me, that I will work with year round. I'll continue to do that. And it's on one of two things. One is personal branding. In fact, when I worked for IBM, LinkedIn had ranked me as the number 1 social seller worldwide. That's LinkedIn's term for a strength of, it's more than brand, but strength of brand, the network, how you engage, all of those things. So that's actually where I started to develop training for the other IBM executives around branding. So I do a significant amount on how to develop your brand identity and what's the strategy in terms of how to get that out in the world. And then also career or executive coaching. So speaking, personal brand coaching, or like career leadership coaching.
Well, that's so super. And we certainly need more of all of that in many organizations today. Victoria, as we just start to, begin to wrap up, here we are, we're towards the end of 2024. If you were to offer our audience one to three, pieces of counsel or advice about, stepping into 2025, about finding your brand, about doing your work without excuses, what words of wisdom would you offer to our audience about, thinking of someone like you, particularly who's got a lot of depth experience in starting fresh? What are some of the pieces of advice you'd offer?
Some of which we talked about. So one, I do think it's critically important to develop agility and a strong amount of resilience. I think our workplaces in the world's going to continue to dramatically change, evolve, or just situations worldwide. Although I certainly hope for wars to end in those things. Hopefully there'll be less of that impacting our world. But I think we continue to need to develop this healthy level of resilience, personally and professionally. So that would be one. I mentioned in the resilient steps, the surrounding yourself with community. If you do not have that today, seek it out. And I find a lot of people are afraid to ask. And the worst that someone can do is say no. And so I'd encourage you to, to do that and build the people around who will help support that. And then the other would be, I'll actually start it by favorite quote of mine by George Adair. Everything you've ever wanted lives on the other side of fear. And so this is about stepping into the discomfort zone. It is in that place where I think growth and transformation and opportunity comes. And that's very much connected to the no excuses mindset, in terms of putting yourself in that place. And I think we're going to need to do that more and more, again, just with the, ever evolving workplace and world around us.
Yeah, it'll certainly be true as we enter 2025, as we face all of the challenges that a new year brings, and drawing on those reserves of resilience that we have in order to not only get us through, but again, to make it better, for yourself, your close others, your community, your organization, just so important. I have had an absolutely delightful time talking with you, Victoria, today. And you're such a reservoir of inspiration. But not only that, you combine that with, what I'll just refer to as, the hard knocks of business. And to have this combination isn't merely additive, but it's really multiplicative. So we get a whole lot more from you that I think distinguishes you from so many others in our leadership space, in our organizational space, in what it means to build a better organization. Just amazing. So I encourage all of you, as I have, to look at the power of whole human leadership. Go out, find it on Amazon, pick up a copy, get in touch with Victoria. We'll have all of this on our in our show notes for the episode. And I'll ask once more, Victoria, if you had a last word to our audience, so what might that be?
To be your own version of unstoppable, and recognize you are the CEO of you, of your brand, of your life, of your joy, of your happiness.
Yeah, so amazing. It's been great to be in conversation with Victoria Pelletier. I encourage you to visit her at victoria-pelletier.com. And until the next episode of The People Dividend, stay well.